For warmth, she slipped into the mountain man's bed. What he saw left him frozen. The wind screamed across the Rocky Mountains like a living thing. Snow fell so hard that the world outside looked like a white wall with no end. Trees bent under the weight of ice, and the narrow mountain paths disappeared under deep snow. It was a night where even strong men stayed inside. Deep in this wild place stood a small wooden cabin. It belonged to a mountain man named Ethan Cole. He lived alone, far away from towns, roads, and people. Ethan liked silence. He liked the sound of firewood burning and the wind outside his door. He believed the mountains were the only place where life made sense. That night, Ethan sat near his fireplace, cleaning his rifle. The fire crackled softly, giving light to the dark room. His cabin was simple, just a bed, a table, some tools, and supplies for winter. He had chosen this life after leaving the world behind. No family, no friends, just the mountains. But peace never lasts long in the wild. A sudden sound broke through the storm. At first, Ethan thought it was the wind playing tricks. But then, it came again. Faint, weak, and desperate. A knock. He stopped moving. In these mountains, a knock at night usually meant trouble. Or death. Slowly, Ethan stood up and walked toward the door. He opened it just a little, letting the cold air rush inside. At first, he saw nothing but snow. Then he noticed something dark near the ground. A woman. She was half buried in snow, her body trembling violently. Her clothes were thin and wet. Her face was pale, almost blue from the cold. She looked like she had walked for miles without rest. Ethan quickly pulled her inside before the storm could take her life. He closed the door and locked it tight. The woman collapsed near the fire, coughing weakly. Ethan studied her carefully. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, not from around here. City clothes, not mountain gear. She didn't belong in this place. "What are you doing out here?" Ethan asked in a low voice. The woman tried to speak, but her lips were too cold. After a moment, she finally whispered, "Cold. Please." Ethan sighed. He didn't trust strangers. But leaving her outside meant death, and even he wasn't that cold-hearted. He threw a thick blanket over her and placed her closer to the fire. Slowly, color began to return to her face. Her breathing steadied. Minutes passed in silence, except for the storm outside. Ethan kept his rifle close, watching her carefully. In these mountains, danger didn't always come with claws or fangs. Sometimes, it came in human form. After a while, the woman sat up slightly. She looked around the cabin, confused and scared. "I didn't want to come here," she said softly. "I had no choice." Ethan didn't answer right away. He studied her eyes. They weren't lying eyes. They were tired and filled with fear. "Name?" he asked. "Lena," she replied. Outside, the wind hit the cabin harder, shaking the walls. Snow piled up against the door like the mountain itself wanted to break in. Ethan added more wood to the fire. The room grew warmer, but the silence between them stayed heavy. Hours passed. Lena slowly recovered, but she remained quiet, as if she was thinking about something far away. Then, as the night grew deeper, Ethan made a decision. He pointed to a small corner of the cabin near the fire. "You can rest there," he said, "but don't cause trouble." Lena nodded weakly. Ethan turned away, ready to return to his chair. But then he heard something that made him stop. Soft footsteps. Before he could react, Lena had moved closer to the fire again. She looked at his bed near the wall. It was the only place warm enough besides the fire itself. Without saying anything, she slowly walked toward it. Ethan's hand tightened around his rifle. "What are you doing?" he asked sharply. Lena stopped, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm too cold. I just need warmth." Before Ethan could stop her, she climbed into the bed. The cabin went completely silent. Even the storm outside seemed to pause. Ethan stood frozen, his eyes locked on her. In all his years living in the mountains, he had never seen anything like this. A stranger, a woman, in his bed, in the middle of a storm. And in that moment, he didn't know what was more dangerous, the storm outside, or the woman inside his cabin. The storm outside the cabin did not calm. The wind kept howling like it was angry at the world. Snow pressed against the wooden walls, making soft cracking sounds. Inside, the fire burned low, casting long shadows across the room. Ethan Cole stood still for a moment, watching the stranger in his bed. The woman, Lena, had not moved since she lay down. Her breathing was slow now, no longer sharp with cold panic, but her presence had broken the silence he had protected for years. Ethan did not trust easily. Living alone in the mountains had taught him one simple rule. Every stranger brings a story, and every story brings trouble. He slowly placed his rifle near the wall, but he did not fully relax. His eyes stayed sharp. Lena opened her eyes slightly. She looked embarrassed, but also tired beyond control. "I didn't mean to take your bed," she said softly. "I just couldn't feel my hands anymore." Ethan did not answer right away. He pulled a chair closer to the fire and sat down where he could watch her and the door at the same time. "This place isn't safe for you," he finally said. Lena gave a weak nod. "I know." Silence returned again, but it was different now. It felt heavier, like something unspoken was sitting between them. Ethan studied her carefully. City clothes, soft hands, not a traveler built for mountains. And yet she had survived long enough to reach his cabin. That alone was strange. "Why are you here?" he asked again, more firmly this time. Lena looked down at her hands. For a moment, she did not speak. The fire crackled, and the wind pressed harder outside. "I ran," she finally said. "From what?" Ethan asked. She hesitated. "From people." That answer was not enough. Ethan had heard lies before, but something in her voice felt broken, not fake. He leaned forward slightly. "People don't chase someone into these mountains for no reason." Lena's eyes flickered toward the window, as if she expected someone to appear in the snow. "They will find me," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "Who will?" But before she could answer, a strange sound came from outside, a crunch in the snow. Ethan stood instantly. His hand went to his rifle. He moved silently to the window and looked out through the small crack between wooden planks. Nothing. Just white snow and dark trees. Still, his instincts told him something was wrong. He turned back to Lena. "Did you see anyone follow you?" Lena shook her head quickly. "No, I ran as fast as I could. I didn't stop." Ethan did not believe it completely. In these mountains, survival meant noticing everything. Tracks, silence, movement. Nothing was random. He grabbed his coat and stepped toward the door. "Stay inside," he ordered. Lena sat up slightly. "Don't go out there, please." Ethan paused. For a moment, he looked at her again. Fear was clear in her eyes, but there was something else too. She wasn't just scared for herself. She was scared of being found. "I need to check," he said. Ethan opened the door carefully. Cold air rushed in like a knife. He stepped outside, rifle ready, scanning the white land. The storm had slowed slightly, but visibility was still poor. Snow covered everything. He walked slowly around the cabin, checking footprints. At first, he saw nothing. Then he stopped. Near the side of the cabin, faint marks appeared in the snow. Not animal tracks. Human. Fresh. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Someone had been there, watching. He followed the prints a few steps, but they disappeared into the storm, as if the person had melted into the white world. Ethan returned to the cabin quickly and locked the door behind him. Inside, Lena was watching him closely. "You saw them," she said quietly. Ethan did not answer immediately. He placed the rifle down, but stayed alert. "Yes," he finally said. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, like she already expected it. "They don't stop," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer. "Who are they?" This time, Lena looked up. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady now. "They are men who think I stole something." Ethan crossed his arms. "Did you?" Lena hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "No, but they won't believe me." A long silence followed. The fire popped softly. Ethan understood something now. This was not just a lost traveler story. This was something bigger, something dangerous. Outside, the wind suddenly hit the cabin again, stronger than before, as if the mountains themselves were warning them. Ethan looked at the door, then at Lena, and for the first time in years he felt it. Trouble had found his cabin. The night outside the cabin grew darker even after the storm slowed. The wind still moved through the trees, but now it felt different, less wild, more controlled, like something was watching instead of just passing by. Inside the cabin, Ethan Cole stayed alert. His rifle rested close to him, but his eyes never stayed in one place for long. Years of living alone in the mountains had made him sharp. He noticed everything, the smallest sound, the faintest movement, even changes in silence. Lena sat near the fire, wrapped in a thick blanket. She looked calmer now, but her hands still trembled slightly. She kept looking at the door, as if expecting it to break open at any moment. "They are close," she said quietly. Ethan did not answer right away. He was listening. Then he heard it. A sound outside. Not the wind this time. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Human. Ethan stood up slowly and moved toward the window. He looked through the thin gap again. At first, he saw nothing but snow and shadows. Then he saw them. 3 men. They stood near the edge of the trees, partially hidden by the storm's leftover mist. All of them wore heavy coats and carried bags. One of them held something long under his arm. Maybe a rifle, maybe something else. They were not moving randomly. They were searching. Ethan's face hardened. He turned back to Lena. "They found you." Lena closed her eyes, like she already knew this moment would come. "I told you. They never stop." Ethan grabbed his rifle and checked it carefully. His movements were calm, but his mind was working fast. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. Lena stood up quickly. "You don't understand. If they see you helping me—" "I understand enough," Ethan interrupted. For a moment, Lena looked at him closely. There was something about him she had not fully understood before. He was not just a man living in the mountains. He was someone who had survived things most people never talk about. Outside, the men moved closer to the cabin. One of them called out, his voice low but strong. "We know she's in there." Ethan did not respond. Another voice followed. "Step outside. We don't want trouble." Ethan slowly walked to the door, but he did not open it. He stood just behind it, listening. Lena whispered behind him, "Don't open it." Ethan said nothing. The voice outside came again, sharper this time. "She took something that doesn't belong to her. Hand her over." Ethan's eyes narrowed. Now he understood a little more. Lena had not stolen something simple. This was something people were willing to cross mountains for. Ethan finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "There's no one here but me." A pause came from outside. Then footsteps moved closer. One of the men stepped near the door. "We saw tracks." Ethan's grip tightened. Lena moved slightly behind him, her breathing uneven. The man outside continued, "You don't want to get involved in this." Ethan looked at Lena for a moment. She shook her head slightly, fear clear in her eyes. But there was something else too. Trust. Ethan made a decision. He opened the door just a little. Cold air rushed inside immediately. The man outside was now visible. His face was rough, tired, and serious. "I said there's no one here," Ethan repeated. The man looked past him, trying to see inside the cabin, but Ethan blocked the view. For a few seconds, both men stared at each other. Then the man spoke again, lower this time. "You don't look like a man who should be involved in this." Ethan's expression did not change. "You don't look like men who should be in my land." The silence between them grew heavy. The men outside shifted slightly. They were ready, but waiting. Ethan could feel it. This situation could turn bad very quickly. But then something unexpected happened. Lena stepped forward from behind Ethan. "Stop," she said firmly. All eyes turned toward her. The men went quiet. The leader narrowed his eyes. "There you are." Ethan felt the tension rise instantly. Lena's voice shook, but she stayed strong. "I didn't steal anything." The man laughed softly. "Doesn't matter what you say." Ethan slowly stepped in front of her again, protecting her without thinking. The leader studied Ethan carefully now. "You don't know what you're protecting." Ethan replied coldly, "She's in my cabin. That's enough." A long silence followed. Then the men slowly began to step back, not leaving, just retreating for now. The leader pointed slightly. "This isn't over." And then they turned and disappeared into the trees. Ethan did not move until they were gone. The cabin fell into silence again, but now it was different. He turned to Lena. "You're not just running," he said quietly. Lena looked down, and in that moment, Ethan understood. Whatever was coming next was far bigger than a simple chase. The night grew colder after the men left, but the danger did not feel gone. It only felt delayed. The forest around Ethan Cole's cabin stayed silent, but it was not the same kind of silence he was used to. This silence had weight. It felt like something was still out there, waiting. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low. Lena Hart sat close to it, her hands wrapped tightly around a blanket. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were now more focused. Something had changed after the confrontation. Fear was still there, but so was determination. Ethan stood near the door, checking the lock and the snow outside through a small crack. Fresh footprints were still visible near the trees. The men had not gone far. They had only pulled back to plan their next move. "They will come again," Lena said quietly. Ethan did not turn. "Yes?" A short silence followed. Lena looked at him carefully. "You didn't have to help me." Ethan finally turned around. His expression was calm but serious. "You were in my cabin. That makes it my problem." Lena gave a small, weak smile, but it faded quickly. "It's more than that," Ethan walked to the fire and sat down across from her. Then explain it. For a moment, Lena stayed quiet. The fire crackled between them, lighting both their faces in soft orange light. Finally, she spoke. It's not just about me, she said. It's about what I have. Ethan listened carefully but did not interrupt. Lena continued. There is land up here. Old land records, proof that powerful men in the valley have been taking it illegally. I found documents, evidence. They don't want it exposed. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. Now it made more sense. So they chased you into the mountains, he said. Lena nodded. I didn't steal anything. I only took proof of what they did. A heavy silence filled the room again. Ethan leaned back slightly, thinking. This was no longer just a survival situation. This was bigger. Corruption, power, men willing to kill over secrets. Outside, a distant sound broke the quiet. A whistle. Ethan stood up instantly. Lena froze. What is that? Ethan moved quickly to the window. His eyes scanned the dark, snow-covered forest. Then he saw them. More men. Not 3 this time. 5 or more, spreading out slowly around the cabin. They were moving carefully, surrounding the place like hunters closing in on prey. Ethan's jaw tightened. They are not waiting anymore. Lena stood up, panic rising again. What do we do? Ethan walked to the corner of the room and opened a hidden wooden box. Inside were supplies he rarely used. Extra bullets, rope, a knife, and old tools. He spoke firmly. We don't wait. Lena watched him closely. What are you planning? Ethan loaded his rifle slowly. We end this before they decide to burn the cabin down. Lena shook her head. There are too many of them. Ethan looked at her. Not if we control the ground. He moved to the back of the cabin and checked the small exit door hidden behind storage crates. Years of living in the mountains had taught him one thing. Never stay trapped. Outside, footsteps grew closer. The men were moving in. Ethan turned to Lena. When I open that door, you run toward the rocks behind the cabin. Stay low. Do not stop. Lena's eyes widened. And you? Ethan checked his rifle one last time. I will slow them down. Before she could argue, a loud sound came from outside. A shout. They're here. The attack began. A loud crash hit the front door. The men were trying to break in. Wood cracked under pressure. Snow fell inside through gaps as the door started to give way. Ethan moved fast. He grabbed Lena's arm. Now! He pushed her toward the back exit. She hesitated for a second, then ran into the snow outside, disappearing into the darkness. Ethan turned back. The front door burst open. Cold wind rushed in as the first man stepped inside. Ethan did not wait. He fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The sound echoed through the cabin. The men froze for a split second. That was enough. Ethan moved like he had done this before. Fast, controlled, precise. He used the furniture, shadows, and tight space to his advantage. One man rushed him, but Ethan knocked him down with the rifle stock. Outside, more shouting began. Lena, hidden near the rocks, watched through the snow as the fight inside the cabin continued. Ethan was holding them back, but there were too many. One of the men noticed movement outside and pointed. She's escaping! 2 men broke off and ran toward Lena. Ethan saw it immediately. Without thinking, he kicked over a burning lantern inside the cabin. Flames spread quickly across dry wood. Leave now! Ethan shouted. The fire gave him just enough cover. The attackers panicked as smoke filled the cabin. Ethan used the chaos to push them back and escape through the rear exit. Outside, snow and fire lit the night together. Ethan ran toward Lena, firing one last shot into the air to scare the men back. The attackers stopped for a moment, unsure. That moment was enough. Ethan reached Lena, grabbed her arm, and pulled her deeper into the mountain shadows. Behind them, the cabin burned brighter, lighting up the snow like daylight. The men did not follow immediately. They had lost control. Ethan and Lena kept moving through the frozen forest until the fire was far behind them. Only then did Ethan slow down. Lena was breathing heavily. Your cabin... Ethan looked back once at the burning light in the distance. It was just wood, he said quietly. We are still alive. But deep down, he knew the truth. This was not over. It had only begun.